In 1872, a ship was found floating empty in the Atlantic. This is what happened to the crew. The Mary Celeste, a merchant brigantine 103 feet long, sailing from New York to Genoa with 1,701 barrels of commercial alcohol. On December 5, 1872, the British ship Dei Grazia spotted her adrift in the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 400 miles east of the Azores. When the Dei Grazia's crew boarded the vessel, they found something that would become one of maritime history's most enduring mysteries. The ship was seaworthy, the cargo was intact, navigation equipment was present, but every single person aboard, 7 crew members, Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, had vanished. No signs of struggle, no blood, no bodies, just an empty ship sailing itself across the Atlantic. To understand what happened, we need to examine the evidence left behind, the environmental conditions, and the physiological mechanisms that could cause an entire crew to abandon a perfectly seaworthy vessel. Let's call our subject Bill, a 37-year-old male presenting to the mid-Atlantic Ocean aboard a merchant vessel in November 1872. Bill was an experienced captain. He'd been sailing for over 20 years. He was known for his caution, his seamanship, and his devotion to his family. This wasn't a reckless man. When he loaded 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, industrial ethanol mixed with toxic additives to make it undrinkable, he followed standard maritime protocols. The Mary Celeste departed New York Harbor on November 7, 1872. Weather reports indicate normal conditions. The ship was provisioned for several months. Bill kept meticulous logs. But on December 5, when the Dei Grazia found the ship, the last log entry was dated November 25, 10 days earlier. The entry was routine. Position logged, weather noted, no indication of distress. What the boarding party found was unsettling in its ordinariness. The ship's cargo was intact, though 9 barrels of alcohol were empty. The ship had taken on some water, but nothing catastrophic. The pumps were functional. The ship's boat was missing, along with the navigation equipment that would have been stored there. The crew's personal belongings were still in their quarters. Food was in the galley. A bottle of cough medicine was on a shelf, uncapped. In the captain's cabin, a child's toy lay on the floor. Most telling, the ship's hull was intact. The sails were in various states, some furled, some torn, one completely missing. The rigging showed signs of damage, but not from a storm, from something else. To understand what could cause an experienced captain to order immediate abandonment of a seaworthy vessel, we need to examine the cargo. Denatured alcohol, ethanol, C2H5OH, mixed with methanol and other additives. In liquid form at standard temperature and pressure but highly volatile. Volatile, from the Latin volatilis, meaning fleeting, flying. A substance that readily vaporizes. The human nose can detect ethanol vapor at concentrations as low as 10 parts per million. At 1,000 ppm, it causes irritation. At 5,000 ppm, sustained exposure causes headache, dizziness, and nausea. At 15,000 ppm, it approaches the lower explosive limit, the concentration at which vapor can ignite. But there's something more dangerous. When barrels of alcohol are stored in a ship's hold, temperature fluctuations cause expansion and contraction. Wood breathes, seams weep. And in the case of the Mary Celeste, 9 barrels were found empty. Not broken, empty. They had leaked or been opened. Let me show you what happens when alcohol vapor accumulates in a confined space. In the hold of the ship, over the course of the voyage, vapor would have accumulated. The concentration would have increased slowly. The crew wouldn't have noticed. Ethanol vapor is denser than air, sinking to the lowest points of the hold. On November 25th, the last recorded date in the log, weather conditions changed. The barometric pressure dropped, temperature fluctuated. These changes would have caused the liquid alcohol to expand, increasing vapor pressure. When Bill inspected the cargo hold that day, standard procedure for a cautious captain, he would have opened the main hatch. Cold air rushing down, warm, alcohol-saturated air rushing up. And in that mixing zone, something happened. A flash fire, not an explosion. The concentration wasn't quite high enough. But a sudden, violent ignition of vapor at the interface of the hold opening. Flames would have shot upward through the hatch. The sound would have been like a cannon blast. Bill would have seen flames erupting from his cargo hold. He would have smelled the acrid burning. And he would have made a calculation. His ship was sitting on top of 1,701 barrels of flammable liquid. Any one of them could explode. The human amygdala, from the Greek amygdal, meaning almond, named for its shape, processes threat responses in milliseconds. When Bill saw those flames, his amygdala activated his sympathetic nervous system. Adrenaline flooded his bloodstream. His heart rate spiked to 120, 140, 160 beats per minute. His pupils dilated. His cognitive processing narrowed to a single imperative: survival. He had seconds to make a decision: stay aboard a ship he believed was about to explode, or get his family and crew into the ship's boat and retreat to a safe distance. He chose evacuation. Standard protocol in 1872 was to attach the ship's boat to the mother vessel with a line. You row back a safe distance, 200, 300 feet, and wait to see what happens. If the ship doesn't explode, you return. If it does, you're far enough away to survive. But here's where the physiology becomes critical. When humans experience acute stress, particularly in cold conditions, our cognitive function becomes impaired. Bill and his crew were wearing 19th century clothing: wool coats, cotton shirts. The Atlantic Ocean in late November has an average temperature of 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Air temperature would have been similar. Hypothermia begins when core body temperature drops below 95 degrees. Hypo, meaning under. Thermia, from the Greek thermos, meaning heat, under heat. At 95 degrees, shivering becomes violent. At 93 degrees, cognitive function deteriorates. Memory fails. Decision-making becomes impaired. Fine motor control, the ability to tie knots to secure a line, degrades. In the urgency of evacuation, in the cold, in the stress-induced tunnel vision, someone failed to properly secure the line connecting the ship's boat to the Mary Celeste. Perhaps it was tied with cold, shaking hands. Perhaps it was secured to damaged rigging. The wind picked up. The seas rose. The Mary Celeste, with her sails still partially deployed, began to move. The line stretched, tightened, and then either it broke or it slipped free. Bill and his crew would have watched helplessly as their ship sailed away. They would have tried to row after it, but a ship's boat, a small auxiliary craft, cannot catch a brigantine under sail. The gap widened. 300 feet, 500 feet, half a mile, gone. Now they faced a different equation. They were in a small boat in the Atlantic Ocean, 400 miles from the nearest land. They had no supplies. Everything had been left on the ship in the rush to evacuate. No food, no water, no navigation equipment except what could be hastily grabbed. The human body can survive approximately 3 weeks without food, but water is different. In cold conditions, with ocean spray causing constant evaporation from skin and lungs, dehydration sets in within 3 days. Dehydration, from the Latin de, meaning removal, and the Greek hydor, meaning water. Removal of water. At 2% body water loss, thirst becomes acute. At 5%, concentration fails. At 10%, the kidneys begin to shut down. At 12%, death is imminent. But there's something worse than dehydration at sea. Desperation leads to a fatal decision: drinking seawater. Seawater contains approximately 35 grams of salt per liter. Human kidneys can produce urine with a maximum concentration of about 20 grams of salt per liter. This means that for every liter of seawater consumed, the kidneys must use 1.5 liters of fresh water from the body to excrete the excess salt. The mathematics are merciless. Drinking seawater accelerates dehydration. As salt concentration in the blood rises, water moves out of cells by osmosis. The cells shrink. The brain, suspended in its protective fluid, begins to malfunction. Confusion sets in. Hallucinations, seizures, eventually, multi-organ failure. When the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste on December 5th, the ship had been sailing itself for 10 days. The vapor flash fire that Bill witnessed had burned out instantly. There was no fuel to sustain it. The ship was never in danger of exploding. But Bill couldn't have known that. His amygdala had made the decision that seemed right. Evacuate. Protect his family. Wait at a safe distance. But a series of small failures, a poorly tied line, cold hands, rising seas, had cascaded into catastrophe. The ship's boat was never found. No bodies were ever recovered. Bill, his wife Sarah, his daughter Sophia, and his 7 crew members disappeared into the Atlantic. The Mary Celeste was salvaged and returned to service. She sailed for another 12 years before being deliberately wrecked in an insurance fraud scheme in 1885. What happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste demonstrates something fundamental about human decision-making under stress. Bill made a rational choice based on the information available to him. He saw flames, he smelled danger, his training, his experience, his instinct to protect his family, all of it pointed toward evacuation. But the gap between perceived danger and actual danger cost 10 people their lives. The amygdala is ancient. It evolved to respond to immediate, visceral threats, predators, fire, falling. It's fast because speed meant survival on the African savanna. But in the modern world, and in Bill's case in 1872, the fastest response isn't always the right response. The prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for reasoning, planning, weighing consequences, is slower. It takes seconds, minutes to fully engage. But those seconds matter. Bill didn't have those seconds. He saw fire and made the choice that seemed obvious. By the time his prefrontal cortex could have intervened, he was already in the ship's boat, already watching the line stretch tight. The Mary Celeste mystery has spawned countless theories over 150 years. Alien abduction, piracy, sea monsters, murder. But the most likely explanation is the most human one. A man trying to protect his family made a reasonable decision that had unforeseen consequences. A flash fire that lasted seconds, a rope that slipped free, an ocean that gives no second chances. The next time you face a moment of crisis, remember Bill. Remember that your amygdala will scream at you to act now. And sometimes, taking 3 seconds to engage your prefrontal cortex, to ask, is the danger I perceive the danger that's real, might save your life. The Mary Celeste sailed on without her crew. A ghost ship. A reminder that the sea, like our own neurology, operates by rules we don't always understand until it's too late. Thanks for watching. If you learned something today, subscribe for more stories where history meets science. And if you have a theory about what happened to the Mary Celeste, leave it in the comments below. Take care of yourself and each other.